Hi, everybody, and welcome to Drop Shot, where the love for tennis meets the thrill of competition. My name is Michele Dinella, and I will be your host and fellow tennis enthusiast. Join me on my personal tennis journey from the clay courts of southern Italy to the bustling streets of Washington, D.C. In each episode, my guests and I will share personal experiences, we'll comment on Grand Slams, analyze players and stats, and even offer tips on gear and apparel. Whether you are a seasoned pro or maybe just picking up a racket, sit back and get ready to serve, volley, and ace your way through the fascinating world of tennis. Hi, listeners, and welcome back to the Drop Shot podcast. Before we dive into today's topic, I would like to take a moment to introduce you to our sponsor for this episode. It's called TennisPAL, and it's an app for your phone that has become a game changer for me and for my tennis community here in Washington, D.C. What does TennisPAL do? Basically, it helps you connect with like minded tennis players and with coaches in your area. You can schedule games, you can chat with other players, and share tips and stories about the sport that we all love. It's available on both iPhone and Android, and it's truly the best way to book a game, to learn from other players, and to grow your love for tennis. So, thank you to TennisPal for being the sponsor of our episode. And if you haven't already, go ahead and download TennisPal today and find your tennis community and hit the courts. Um, but here we are, and this is going to be a very special episode for me because I have today the honor to interview Haleh Emrani, the visionary founder behind TennisPAL. She has a background as an electrical engineer, and she has worked in the tech industry since 1991. But her passion for community building and tennis led her to create TennisPAL, a unique platform, as we said, connecting tennis enthusiasts around the world. Growing up in Iran, El Haleh faced challenges as a young woman wanting to play sports, yet her love for tennis stayed strong, inspiring her and us to build an inclusive app for players everywhere. Haley also holds a Ph.D. in Near Eastern History from UCLA and is an active philanthropist supporting cultural and educational causes. Hello, Ale, and welcome to the Drop Shot podcast.
Hi, Michele. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Trust me, the pleasure is all mine. I am very thrilled for the conversation that we're going to have today. And as I like to start with all of my guests, I would like to ask you to tell us more about your journey as a tennis enthusiast. What is the first memory, the very first core memory that you have related to the beautiful sport that is tennis, and where did your passion for it originate from?
As I was, so I have to tell you, I'm in my 60s and I lived in Iran until I was 20. And I have always been an active individual. I like sports. I like playing ball, any type of physical activity I'm interested in. And during the period when I was growing up, the royal family of Iran was active. They were most avid tennis players, and we could hear about their participation in the sports and their passion for the sports. We even had a Tehran Open, which was called Aryameh Cup, which was basically a tennis tournament that was held in the main arena in Iran. So we had exposure to tennis as a sport that some people participated in, but also we heard about people who came to Tehran to participate in the tournament. I don't know if you remember, you may be too young, but Guillermo Vilas was the champion two years in 74 and 77. So there was a lot of talk and buzz around tennis in general all the time in Iran. And I think my if you say the memory that has stuck with me is the championship where Vilas actually won the Aryamer Cup, in 74. And so that's, and also I have to say I used to go to a school that was next door to one of our major tennis clubs, so I had the opportunity to um, watch others play the sport, and it's a beautiful one. So
That's great that you got that exposure, Hale. Well, as you might know, I'm also a first generation immigrant here in the United States. I was born and raised in southern Italy, and I remember there wasn't much going on tennis wise in my hometown. But I did have a subscription to a tennis club, one of the very few tennis clubs. There used to be only two. Now there's three. So I when I moved to America, I loved how many public tennis courts are
true.
there. At least here in the Washington D.C. slash Virginia or Maryland area, I was really really positively surprised by that, and I think it's not random. It's not a case that the American movement is growing so strong compared to all the other movements in the world. Of course, right now we are proud in Italy to have people like Yannick Sinner, number one ATP, of course,
Jasmine,
Jasmine Paolini, of course. We talk about her on this podcast a
that's
lot,
right.
and she has a great energy. She's a very dynamic player, but also let's not forget Sara Errani, Lorenzo
Sarah,
Musetti,
of course.
and many others. But there's something to the American movement that makes it feel more solid, more organized, and I really believe that it goes back to the roots. It goes back to the fact that here in this country, if you want to go out and play tennis, you do have a chance to. You just need your racket and balls and a friend.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Yes, yes. We had limited access to tennis courts. I mean, tennis was considered the sport for the elite because you had to be
Yes,
member of a club to have access to the court to be able to play. And as you correctly mentioned, that's not the case in this country. Any park, any public park you go to, you have the opportunity to get on the court and find somebody to play with. And this is actually something that TennisPAL is a tool for you to be able to find that somebody to use the court with.
exactly. If there was a place that I thought something like TennisPAL could sprout from, that would be exactly the United States. So that's a positive coincidence, if it is a coincidence at all. But I'm very jealous of that exposure that you had since such a young age, that love that grew into you for tennis, because I don't feel like I had the same. It was more of an adult feeling that grow
Mhm.
for me. And so I wanted to ask you. You started playing tennis as a teenager, as you said, in Iran. And I would like you to tell us more about what the tennis scene was like in your country during that time, especially for young women.
Sure. As I mentioned, there were it was at least in Tehran, which was the capital city, many people were engaged in participating tennis matches. But as I said, in private clubs, we did have a number of relatively large private clubs that you needed to be a member of, and so it wasn't, I shouldn't say it was a popular game, but it was a game that you could hear about, and it was in the consciousness of the public again because the royal family participated and because we did have the cup and we heard the news of athletes coming to Tehran to play. I started as an older teenager. I wish I had started earlier, for the reason that I initially was active in team sports. So I was playing volleyball and basketball and soccer, as most kids did back then. And only after the Iranian Revolution that limited the participation of female players in team sports, that I kind of moved towards tennis, because tennis, it's a game that's played, with two players, and it can be in an enclosed or a limited access environment. So you were allowed to put on a tennis clothes and play without having to cover yourself. So that was basically the maybe the main reason for me starting to play, because it gave me the opportunity to be physically active without having to deal with some of the limitations that had been exposed. But as a country, I think the I want to say the upper echelon of the society, they had the opportunity to be members at these clubs and play, but not regular people. And when I started to, I had the good fortune that my school had a tennis court, so we had access to one court that allowed us to use it. And also, after the revolution, some of the clubs that were private, they became public. And the way this was one of the rare instances that maybe the opportunity came up for this sport to grow, in the sense that they had for instance, the morning sessions were limited to girls and the afternoon sessions for boys, because they wanted to keep the sexes, the segregated. But at least there was opportunity to play. And as I said, my school was next to one of the major clubs at the time, so that gave me the opportunity to start playing. But I have to tell you, I have a picture of my best friend's mother from the um, early 60s, and she's in a tennis clothes and she's playing on a court at that time. So basically, Iran had exposure to the sport, but it was meant for a specific group of people. And as you just mentioned, even right now, the US provides the opportunity to have access to courts in a public environment, but most other countries, I think you need to be member at a private club or have some special access to be able to play. It's not something that's easily accessible.
Hale, I know a few things about Iran because my best friend in Italy, his dad is about your age and he had to escape the revolution.
Right.
He's from Tehran and his name is Ardeshir. Um, and he came to Italy and he met my friend's mom, and so they made him and his sister. And I don't think that the tennis scene in Italy, at least for women, was so different than what you uh,
Mm-hmm.
described. So those differences were there probably also in Europe up until the late 80s, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy that we, at least in the Western world, that we are over those differences, and that WTA now is such a solid movement, and that we have so many stars also from the women's side, maybe even more from the women's side than from the ATP side. But yeah, I wanted to ask you about that transition that you made in your 20s from living in Iran to moving to the United States, because I mentioned at the start of our conversation that you came here and you got your degree in electrical engineering. But how did that happen, and how did it change your life?
I have to say it is a drastic change. You may have had the same experience. I mean, the US is very different from the rest of the world. So I did go to a French school, so I had exposure to the French culture. I had been to Europe many times. I never felt that it was very different from Iran. But when I came to the US, I felt like it's a totally different world. I mean, um, for one thing, everything was bigger and more, and more open. And the one thing that I truly appreciate about this country is that if you're able and willing to do something, they give you the opportunity to do it. In other countries, sometimes you're limited if you're an immigrant, or if you're a woman, or you're a stranger or a foreigner, this and that. But I didn't feel like you there are limitations here too, but I didn't feel like they're as severe as what we were experiencing. Obviously, for me in Iran after the revolution, there were many limitations. But even in Europe, I always felt that if you're not a native, I don't know, French person, even if you spoke the language or you were involved in the society, you were not given the same opportunities as a French person. You know what I'm saying? So this country, it's a shock when you come to the US. It dazzles you, but at the same time, it can be very challenging. You have to get used to many things that you're not used to. And the reason for me coming to the US, the main reason was going to the university, because after the Islamic Revolution, Iran went through a cultural revolution. And during that time, they closed down the universities. So there was no opportunity to attend higher education institutions. And if you wanted to continue your education, you had to basically go abroad. And that's how I ended up being in the US. And I should have gone to France based on my background, but my cousins had already immigrated to Texas, of all places, in the US. So I ended up coming to the US and going to Austin, Texas, to be able to attend University of Texas. But then quickly I realized that maybe it's not the exact right place for me, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I've been here since 1984. And I enjoy the fact that we can play all year round outdoors, and there are tennis courts all over the place. So this is as far as I'm concerned, this is the right place to be.
I love that. I love that for you. I'm also from a pretty warm place. I'm from a small city in southern Italy. I'm from the beach, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I was raised on the clay courts since age 7, and it was also a big change for me when I moved here and I started playing. And here in DC, it's all basically hardcore,
Hardcore, same
and the
for
ball is
us.
so fast.
Not only that, it's so hard on your body. I mean, clay, because you could also play when it's drizzling, but here, if there is one drop of rain, your match gets canceled.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know the struggle with that. But still, the scene here in the United States is so much better than when I'm from. I remember going home for the Christmas holidays last year, and I just wanted to play tennis, and I had to renew my subscription to a tennis club. I had to present my doctor's certificate that my ECG was fine. I had to sign a ton of papers just to play a single game of tennis.
Wow.
And then you go to these clubs and they're always half empty. And I really don't understand, like, where are the young people, first of all, and why are they not playing tennis? And so this is something that really opened my eyes. compared to the movement here in the United States, and made me think a lot, and also was one of the reasons why I started the Drop Shot podcast. But going back to what you were talking about, to your own youth, you said that at the time, especially in Iran, you were missing the female role models when it came to sports, and especially when it came to tennis. So, who did inspire you to play tennis?
Not female players, so to say. We had Mansour Bahrami, obviously. I mean, we heard about his, you know, uh, artistry on the court. And it was interesting for me to hear the name of an Iranian playing in France and basically being talked about. So that was it. But on TV at the time, people you would see were Bjorn Borg, Connors, Steffi Graf, Martina Navratilova, John McEnroe. At the one funny anecdote, my the first racket that I purchased was the Dunlop Max Pie, which was McEnroe's wooden racket. I still have it. I brought it with me to the US. I have
that's
it as a souvenir. Yeah, I love that racket.
that's beautiful.
I know. So those were the people that we would watch on TV. We still had
Mhm.
access to, to television. So that, and again, the sport allowed me to be physically active without having to deal with some of the restrictions that were placed on women. I remember I found a club nearby and I was going there to play. It was all female. So there were a few. Interestingly enough, with that, we did have female coaches. There were a few female coaches teaching everybody, and girls were playing. Another, but I have to say the biggest influence on me maybe is Martina Navratilova. Even to this day, I mean, she played until she was over 50 years old. It was unbelievable. I mean, she's such an inspiration. And my first non-wood racket was her Yonex racket. I never forget this. So she was my idol. So Navratilova was somebody that I was looking up to, and it was great to see. And she also went through this upheaval of having to immigrate, and she left Czechoslovakia and she became a U.S. citizen and all that. So I could relate. To her story, even though I have to say I can go back to Iran easily. I don't have any restrictions. My immigration was um, basically voluntary. I did it voluntarily, but still the feeling is the same. You end up in a place that is not your home, and then you're trying to fit in. So she did a great job, and she was such a champion. So she was always a good role model for, I think, for any female athlete.
Ale, do you remember a player from Italy called Adriano Panatta?
I do actually. I remember Fanata. Yes, I do.
Everyone was in love with Panatta. He had such like an iconic hairstyle. He still rocks it.
Style, style. He had style.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I still have, you know what? I like to play with one of the first graphite rackets that came out in 1986, and it's
Uh-huh.
a Prince graphite.
Is it
Um,
the long one, the Chan's one, or no?
yes, 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 it's that edition.
That's the.
And it's such a different feeling from anything else that I have racket wise. It
Right,
feels to me sometimes 'cause the head is smaller than whatever you find around in the contemporary rackets market, and
right,
it's also much heavier. So I
right.
have a love and hate relationship with that racket, but at the same time, being so heavy and being the head so small, I can throw some bombs with my forehand, and I really love that.
That's great. I mean,
I
it's
think that if I were from that time, I
yes.
would be a much better tennis player, probably.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, actually, this is a great point. The equipment has changed so much that a lot of the shots are not the same as they used to be, and people do some incredible things right now. But yeah, we did not have the same type of equipment, I have to say. I mean, with a wooden racket, you're very limited.
Yeah, because we went from wood to an hybrid with graphite, then only graphite, and now we have basically carbon fiber, and God knows whatever is gonna come out
Next,
next.
that's
Yes,
right.
but I'm excited. I'll be here to try it. I'm a huge geek when it comes to equipment, when it comes to rackets and strings, and we've talked a lot about, and even outfits. Honestly, we talk
That's
about
right.
it all the time here.
As an
uh,
Italian, outfit
Yes.
should be first for you.
Yes, 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 absolutely. And you can ask all of my tennis community here in Washington, D.C. They will tell you that I bring the style on the court.
I'm sure.
But going back to the heart of our conversation, to the reason why we are here, I mentioned my tennis community here in DC, and one of the reasons why it actually exists is because of TennisPAL.
Oh,
Um,
great.
I wasn't lying when I said that it has made such a difference, such an impact on my tennis experience here in the US. I have a very selected group of people, 100 and something that I know very well in person, each one of them, and it's just a group of people that I met mostly through the app,
Oh,
and
nice.
we hit every Saturday and Sunday, with the rain, with the snow, with the heat outside. Everyone is very, very committed, and I have to say I had a great experience with TennisPal. I feel like I'm an ambassador to this app.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
No, thank you. Thank you for creating it. And I wanted to go back to the very roots of it. Uh, I want to go back to 2016 when you initially founded it. Can you tell us more about the general idea and the vision behind it, even before you created it?
Sure. So I have to tell you, tennis for me is like therapy for many people, meaning that it helps me control my temper. It's stress management for me. I enjoy playing. It's something I look forward to, and I have always played multiple times a week with different people, and I've always had a coach. I try to improve my strokes and all that. But when I was before I so I'm semi-retired right now, but in 2016 we were going full force. Before 2016, I was working full time, and my job required me to travel a lot. So I had to go to meetings all over. I had to attend conferences and things of that nature. And this travel disrupted my tennis schedule, because when you go to somewhere you're not familiar with, first of all, how are you going to find somebody to play with? How would you know where to go to
Hmm.
find the court? How would you schedule it? So that challenge kind of gave me this idea, and this is when I think it was right around the time that Uber had become popular. And this idea that somebody's going this way and they will take you with them, it occurred to me that why don't we do something like that for tennis, that right, I'm here and I like to play, if you're here as well nearby, why don't we connect and play an hour or two on a public court. So that idea basically, and because I was in technology already, I was working in the computer industry, I started to think that maybe we should create an app that would be similar to Uber, connecting people together for a very specific reason, for the purpose of scheduling and playing a tennis match. So that's how the idea came about. And then 2016, I had an opportunity to essentially leave the job that I had at the time and start working on something new. And that new thing was the creation of the app. So I was able to assemble a team quickly, and we were able to create the app both on iPhones and Androids. And it was in the market basically December of 2016.
Let me tell you, Hale, this is a very entrepreneurial mindset, and I love that. I love to hear this story. And not only you are a very humble and down to earth person, but I can tell that you have a vision for things, which is something that I love to see. And
Thank you.
um, I can really feel it when I think of TennisPAL, and compared, for example, to all the other tennis apps that you can find on the App Store on your iPhone. I have tried them all, and TennisPal is not only the best, but it's really the only one that works, the only one that you can find people on. And there must be a reason to that. There must be a reason that goes beyond the simple user experience, but it's about probably the ideals behind it. And one of the things that I enjoyed the most from day one was the fact that this is free for everyone to sign on. And I believe that that was part of your vision when you initially created the app. Is that right?
Correct, correct. We had two main goals basically: to create a safe environment for tennis players to connect, and to do it in a way that was not basically infringing on their privacy or creating an additional headache for them. Because this idea of sharing personal data and the issues around privacy was something that it is something that we're very serious about. We do not share data with any other organization. We as you know, there are no ads on the platform. Because the goal was not financial gain. The goal was to create a community. And the fact that it was free, we made it free at the beginning for all the functions, to create the community first. And then once people felt that there is value, we're hoping that once you experience the app and you see the value of it, then you would permanently become a member of a community. It's that we didn't want to basically limit ourselves to people who were willing to pay for it at the beginning. That's why it grew quite nicely at the beginning. But I have to say, when you have a free app, you also end up with some people that are not serious tennis players. One anecdote that may sound funny to you: some people use it as a dating app. And we did hear people kind of making the comment that somebody called me and asked me for that. And we said, oh, we're very sorry. This is not the purpose of the app, but we cannot people stopping from doing that. But at the same time, I always thought that if you want to meet someone, why not meet over something you have a common passion for, and it's outdoors and safe. I mean, even if you look at it that way, I think it has value. But anyhow, so it started as a free app, but as you may know, lately for the last few months we've introduced the subscription model. It is not, you don't need to subscribe right away. You can download and use the app, and as you get more basically familiar with it and you feel like you really like to have the advanced functions, you can become a subscriber. Because that's the only way we can, because we do not sell anybody's data, and because we do not have ads, that would be the only way for us to become sustainable financially.
Absolutely. And I witnessed Tennis Pal's pivot to this hybrid model, which I think is the most respectful solution towards the users and the customers, because it still leaves a chance for people to interact freely. without being charged, but at the same time, it has additional features for those who want to invest in them. And I was one of those people saying, when TennisPAL risked to shut down, I was one of the people who reached out and said, "Hey, I am willing to support you in order to keep this app going."
Thank you.
And I was able to see so many other people that love the app and that reacted in the same way. So that means that in the last few years, you have done your work and that you have really created a supportive community. And that's something really remarkable nowadays on the internet. So this is why I was impressed positively by the experience, not only the experience, by the general feeling of this app and of this community. I read somewhere that it has over 100,000 followers. Maybe right now it's even more, and it's generally a very large audience. But as you said, as a self-founded project, it has had some difficulties, some bumps on the road. And so I wanted to ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in the past, and how the community of TennisPAL can support you the best?
Thank you. The challenges, as you mentioned, because we're self-funding, and I want to stress, we have not taken investors' money. We don't use ads. We don't do anything that would force us into having to share our data with others or having to change our ideals to match somebody else's vision. That's why we have never approached others to invest in the app. This is a community built. It's something for the community, by the community. So one challenge has always been for us the financial aspects of things. We have had the few things here and there. For instance, we do have a very active Instagram presence, and like a car company uh, paid us money to put a message for them on our Instagram, but nothing on the app. And I have been essentially funding the project, and right now Fahad and I are doing this together. Um, but last year, I want to say about a year and a half ago, we were at the point that we had to decide whether to shut down the whole thing or introduce the new model, and we decided to introduce the new model. Basically, we did announce, you may have remembered, we did announce that we're considering shutting down the app, and
Mhm.
everybody was up in arms that no, we're using it. So we said,
I
okay,
was one of them.
I know. And we asked, so if you're interested, what would be the price that you're willing to pay for it? And people communicated with us, and that's how the subscription model has come about. But that's the main challenge we've had. The rest of it, it has really been a great project because people who are involved with it, they all are passionate about the sport. And also, I want to say one nice thing about TennisPAL is that it's very inclusive. Our community is very large and diverse. If you look at some of the people who are on the app, or even some who post their short videos and things like that, you can tell that this is not a closed community for an elite group or anything like that. So we always wanted to say that we're trying to democratize tennis. We're trying to create an opportunity for everybody to participate and everybody to play without having to pay for a huge membership fee at a club or anything like that. And I have to say that the community has supported us too. Some small challenges here and there. Some people basically did not use the platform properly. So we do have some limits around that. If somebody reports somebody for bad behavior, we approach them. We warn them, and then we deactivate their account. And the one thing that I want to stress: human beings deal with issues. Any issue you report, either I or Fahad or somebody, an actual person contacts you and tries to solve the problem. We're not relying on algorithms and things like that. So we understand if there is a challenge, and we're very quick in trying to resolve the issue. So in case of, in form of challenges, we have had some of those that people did not use the platform properly, but we took care of those things quickly and efficiently.
And I think that's also one of the secrets behind the success of TennisPAL among all the other tennis apps on the Apple Store and on Android. So kudos to that. Hale,
Thanks.
we are approaching the conclusion of our conversation today. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions about how do you see the future of tennis on an amateur level, and what are the main differences that you have noticed between tennis back in your days and tennis in a contemporary fashion?
The main thing the difference, I want to start with the difference. And tennis used to be an elite sport. You had to have access to a private club, private instruction. You needed to pay for the equipment, all these things. And it was not really open. And if you remember from the time that we were younger, if you watch TV, they were mostly white, well-to-do people from European countries and the US, maybe, and Australia, white people, if I can categorize it that way. But nowadays, that's not the case anymore. The tennis community has become extremely diverse. People play from many different groups, and young kids are playing in parks, and they have access, and this is something that's really nice to see, because some of the champions that we're watching now would not have been on TV like 40 years ago. um, so it's heartwarming to see that the sport has become accessible basically by diverse groups of people. So that's a nice thing that I've noticed, the change. As far as the vision for the future, I just hope, as I said, that people become more active physically and emotionally with the sport. It is something that you can play until your dying day. You play at your own level. It is a sport that you can basically socialize around. It's something that connects people. And TennisPAL is one of those tools that would allow these communities to form and for people to come together around the sport. So the vision for the app, as I said, is to democratize tennis. It is here to connect people together and allow everybody to find others to play with wherever they are. Because as you know, you can search locally, or you can search, for instance, if you're traveling and you're going to be in Las Vegas next week, you can search around that zip code and find people there. So it gives you that opportunity, which I thought was unique. And I just hope that our membership grows in a way that you could find other tennis paths all over.
And have you had the thought of expanding TennisPal also outside of the United States one day? Is that something that we can expect in the nearest future?
It's an interesting question. When we started, we had not limited the app to the US, but quickly we learned that you need to stay local until you create a community, then move to the next place. The app actually functions in the, outside of US. We do have a small community in France. We do have a not so small community in Canada. And I know of some people in Mexico who are using it. But the challenge is that you need to be able to have a mass for it to be useful. You need to have a large group of members in that location for it to function well. So if we get to a point that we can advertise in such a way that we could create local communities outside of the United States, we absolutely are interested. The app functions. We just have to find the ambassadors to kind of promote it there.
Well, Ale, let me tell you, let's get down to business and we can do TennisPAL Italy, and I will be personally your ambassador.
That would be great. I love to see that. We can definitely give it a shot.
All right, all right. But for tonight, that is enough brainstorming. This has been such an electric, such an exciting conversation with you. And I want to thank you for being here with us because it's such an added value to the Drop Shot podcast, hearing your story. It's so refreshing and it's so inspiring for all the people that love tennis, for all the people that want tennis in their life and that want a future for this sport. So thank you so much for my guest, Haleh Emrani.
Thank you. I hope to see you on the courts.
All right, we will organize that. Don't worry about it. But for now, thank you, listeners, for having come so far, for listening through all of this interview, and I will meet you on the next episode. And most importantly, go to the link below and download TennisPal.